Hi guys, and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today we're taking a closer look at a model from a Canadian brand, Branch Horology. They specialize in making vintage looking watches, and this is their first model. It's a sector dial inspired model, and quite frankly it's a real beauty. Now, if you follow my channel, you know I like legible watches. I like watches where the hands reach their designated markers. So a sector dial watch is actually a wet dream of mine once it's done right, and this one definitely is. But first, let's cover the specs, because being a sector dial wouldn't mean anything if this watch wasn't fitting my wrist. Luckily, this one, with 36 millimeters in diameter at just under 43 lug to lug, fits my 6.5-inch wrist perfectly. But most impressive is the thickness or lack of. As you can see, this watch, despite having this highly domed crystal, is 10.9 millimeters measured. If we take away the crystal, it becomes incredibly thin. But the best thing about it is that the thickness comes from the case, the bezel, and the crystal, while the case back, as you can see, is almost flush to the case. That's because they went with a snap-on case back. And once you try a watch with this kind of a case back where the lugs actually follow down the curvature of your wrist, because there's no bulging case back to lift the case off your wrist, nothing else comes close when it comes to wearability and comfort on wrist. This is one of the most comfortable watches I have ever worn, and because it's so small and so thin, it is very light, so you really do not feel it on your wrist. You strap it on and it just disappears. Now, this comes with two optional straps, this one and another which is like a gray calfskin. This is a beautiful suede strap. The lug size is slightly odd at 19 millimeters, but because I have my reverso, I managed to swap some of those straps as well. But this one, 19 millimeters, actually fits my wrist pretty well, because unlike most straps on the market that are 120 or 125 on the long part, which is too long for my wrist, this one is 115, so fits my wrist perfectly. I cannot describe you how comfortable this watch is. When it comes to the movement, they use a manual wind Sellita SW210, and that is the reason why this watch is so slim. Now, a lot of my vintage watches are actually manual wind, and if you have a dedicated manual wind movement, the winding action is something that you truly enjoy. It's completely different to automatic watches that have the manual winding option, where the dedicated manual wind watches just feel much better. The clicks are much better. The way the watch feels and sounds as you wind it, it truly is a joy. Now, the dial itself is gorgeous, and it's a proper sector dial done the right way, meaning that the dial is done in silver, and there are different finishes. So as you can see, each section or sector of the dial is done in a different finish, and the printing on it is so thick and so nicely done that it actually gives you a 3D effect, and you can see it catch the light, shine off the light, and even create some casting shadows. So this is how you do a sector dial. The hands are heat blued, and the watch is hand assembled in Canada. Also, they regulate the movement. They don't say it on their webpage, but when you get the watch in the papers, you can see the results that they got from regulating this movement, or how it behaved in different positions. To stay true to their vintage style and everything, the crystal is acrylic, and that is actually one of the very few things that I dislike about this watch. Yes, it gives a nice warmth, it gives that vintage feeling, but I've reviewed many watches during this year and past years where they get this same feel and this same look, but feature a sapphire crystal. Naturally, with the sapphire, this would probably not be as light as it is, but I would prefer a sapphire because I own, like I said, a couple of vintage watches with the acrylic, and they do scratch up. And I know some people enjoy polishing and buffing those out, but I always hated it because I buff it out one afternoon and by tomorrow I can see a couple of scratches, and that always annoyed me, and that is the reason why I went with a Speedmaster Sapphire Sandwich instead of the regular acrylic. Now, the hands are beautifully done. They reach their designated markers, and the watch as a whole is just a beauty and very well made. The bezel is polished, by the rest of the case is brushed. The crown is unsigned, and that is slightly another thing, let's say, that kind of bothers me. Also, the watch does feature gaskets, but they do not offer official water resistance. I do believe this is splash resistant, but I wish they gave a claim so you know you can use it around water. And then we come to the biggest problem that I have with this. So it is beautifully made, it's gorgeous, it's wonderful to wear, it's wonderful to use, it's incredibly well made. But a pretty industrial looking crown with no actual water resistance that they stand behind, and they're asking just below $1,000. Now, I understand that the cost of making this in Canada, making it as well as it is made, and regulating the movement does come with its costs, but I believe they should up the game, like offer a signed crown, stand behind the water resistance, and maybe even include a sapphire option if nothing else, and then I would be more than happy to pay the price. Like this, if you really like it, yes, go for it. It's incredibly well made, even under macro it looks spectacular, and I just love the logo and the simplicity of the dial, because sector watches are something that combines simplicity and complexity all at once when done right, and this is one of the best sector dial watches I have ever reviewed. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and until the next video, bye.